show you how you can make beautiful symmetric wallpaper designs from curves and designs that you make, and in particular in this video I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful design such as this background from one of your own images, in this case a 35mm slide that I took in Iceland in the year 2000. So what we need in order to start this out is a slide. So here's a picture which has been cropped from Iceland, and we want to put this duck in there. And if we go back here and look at the big picture for a second, then you'll see that that duck is down here in a triangle based on this in the center, and this is it's going sort of uphill. So here is the duck again, and the duck is not doing what we wanted to do, but we need to have a triangle. If you get my scripts, you will get along with it a set of template files, for example this template, and if we look at the layers palette over here, we can see the template is simply a transparent layer, which is not a background layer, and a mask, which is masking out the upper right corner. So the triangle is basically oriented below this diagonal line, and so we need to get the duck into there. Then we're going to make that into a pattern, and then that pattern will become the basis for constructing the fill, which fills up the plane and makes that beautiful background. Okay, so what we have to do then is take the picture from the slide and copy it onto the other template. So we do a Control-A to select the whole thing, or Command-A if you're on a Mac system, and then we use Control or Command-C to copy onto the clipboard. Once it's on the clipboard, we can go back to the template and we can paste it, which we can do with a Control or Command-V. So here it is pasted. It is essentially always true that what you get after pasting is not going to be what you want in the final thing. You are going to have to do a transformation on this. So we'll do free transform by Control or Command-T, which will select this layer and give us the bounding box along with the handles, which allow us to control how this is moved and transformed. For what we are doing, it happens to be that we don't need to do much of anything. We can move it over into, put the duck in about the right place, rotate the picture and move it down, and let's rotate it a little bit less. And so here we have a duck going uphill. Maybe we'll back it up a little bit. And so we have something similar to what I used in the construction of the background, which we're going to complete here in a minute. So since we've got the transformation lined up in the proper, in the desired way that we want it to be, we simply hit enter and the transformation gets performed. Okay, now we need to mask the duck, so we need to copy the mask, and in order to do that you have to select the mask down from below, and holding the Alt button drag it up onto the layer. So now we have the duck going uphill in the mask in the triangle, and so this is what we want to set up as our pattern, from which we can then construct the complete fill of the wallpaper design. Because what we have here is a large copy of the slide. By the way, if you did want to have later transformations of this, what you can do is click this locking link here, which is locking the mask with the image above, because we want the mask to stay the same, but you can now move the image if we are in the move mode. So we can now move the picture. Oh, we're in the wrong layer. Okay, we can now move the picture around and the mask stays the same. So, okay, so you can always do a fine adjustment this way, remembering to unhook this coupling. If you leave the coupling hooked and start moving things around, the whole triangle, well, I can show you that, the whole triangle will move, and that's not what you want. So then you can go and undo that by Control Command Z, and so we get it back. Now, in order to construct a pattern in Photoshop, it won't do it as long as we've got this large layer sitting here, which is bigger than the image. So we can do one of two things to solve this problem. One of them is to go in and crop this image to the shape that you see on the display. The other one is to simply delete the layer below, which I find an easier thing to do. So if we take this layer and just copy it into the trash, now we have the single layer which contains the image in the position that we want in order to construct our fill. So we go to Edit in the pull-down menu, Edit, and then down here it says Define Pattern. So you click on Define Pattern, and you get a dialog box like this, which comes from Photoshop, which shows a small copy, which is a little bit hard to read, but you can get the idea. If you're doing it on your own screen, you can get the idea that it's the same as this. You have the opportunity to give it a name, and please give it a name, because I've given these templates names that are easy to remember, like this is 306090 template, so you can't mess up on what you want to use when you're selecting off of a file list. Okay, so we name this. Now I've already done this before, so I won't name it and do that. You would name it and then push OK. I will just say cancel because I've already got this on my list of patterns. Okay, so we'll cancel this. Now we need now we're going to make this fill, and we need a place to do it. So I've created a 8.5 by 11 horizontal space here. It is always good advice to do things on separate layers, and the good advice here is to always make a new layer which is going to have your wallpaper design in it. So we'll click on the new layer icon down here. So now we have a new layer on top into which we can fill our wallpaper design. I've tried to incorporate this step into my scripts, but I find that it's not possible to do it in the context in which these scripts operate, which is the Photoshop Creative Cloud versions after middle of January 2014. Okay, so we have a space now into which we want to do the fill. So we do fill by Edit Fill in the menu, or by Shift F5. I like shortcuts, so I do Shift F5. And that gives you this dialog box from Photoshop in which you get to select what you want to do. So on the top box you select, you don't want these colors, you don't want these fixed things, you want a pattern. You want to select the pattern that you want, and so here's the list of patterns. I've got a lot of patterns in here, and I've chosen to make this list display with its titles. So this is uphill deck number 2. If you want to play around with how you see your patterns, you play around with clicking on this button. That's not a topic for this discussion, but that's the way you do it. Okay, so we've got our pattern, and we will now come back to this box. The next part of the next little box in this dialog is about blending modes, and that's not relevant to these fills. So we just skip all over that. We want to make sure that we have the scripted pattern box checked, and we want to make sure that in the drop-down list we have selected wallpaper, because that's what we're trying to do. So now we click OK, and it will now generate. It tells you it's going to generate the preview, and then it's going to, hello, here we are, and we're going to generate the preview, and here's the preview coming up. So now the preview has several nice features, one of which is there's a preview window here, and I have added not only the slider for zooming, but buttons which allow you to zoom in by factors of 2 and zoom out by factors of 2. I find that the really easy way to see what's going on. So you can easily see the pattern of what's going on. So this is maybe, this is a good place to be. You can see the default is you've got a button here to see wallpaper, which is what you're seeing here, or you can see just the pattern in case you've forgotten what you're doing. I will show you the pattern. If you click on this button, my script will show you the pattern size to fit within the box of the preview. Okay, we want to see the wallpaper almost always. We don't need to be reminded about the pattern, but it's there in case you desire it. Now there are several things you have to control about telling the script what you want as a result. The first thing is what kind of symmetry you want. There are 17 different kinds of symmetries. If you go to Wikipedia and look up symmetries or wallpaper, you will find some mathematical discussion which you can explore if you want about the possibility that there are 17 possibilities. They have these code names which I'm not going to describe here because we're just going to visualize what's going on by looking in the preview window. Okay, so the first 6 of these symmetries basically construct brick-like structures with different patterns of reflections and rotations of your pattern. The ones beyond are more interesting, but we'll show you all of them in just a minute. For each symmetry, when you choose it, you will see at the bottom a description of what shape of a pattern you want to have if you want to make sure that all pixels in your selection get filled with a pixel from your pattern. In the first 6 cases, any rectangle will do, and I show you a picture of the rectangle. Okay, so let's go down the symmetries just to show you how this works. If you double click this, you can go down, use your arrow keys and go down the list. So here's a different symmetry of the bricks and different ways the bricks are getting rotated. You can visualize how that works, and at your leisure, if you get this script, you can play with this. Okay, now we get into more interesting ones, and now we have shapes which are not rectangles. So here we have an isosceles triangle, and it shows you which way it's oriented, namely the 2 equal sides point upwards, and the base of any width is at the bottom. Okay, so that shows you the shape you want and the orientation. So let's go back here and go down the symmetries, and you can see different patterns. By the way, what's happening here? This says that what you want to have in this particular pattern is a square, because it's going to basically rotate the square in 4 orientations. You can see that going on here, but I won't bother you with the details. But what I do want to point out is the white spaces. The white spaces mean that when you do the fill, these pixels are not going to get filled. So therefore, you're going to have transparency in your result. This can be interesting if you want to make different layers with different patterns, superimpose them, and play around with blending modes and color shifts and all kinds of things which can make very fun stuff. Okay, now we're still going down the symmetries. So here's one that I find a little bit fascinating. Excuse my cough. And we'll go on down. The one we want, this is nice, but very static. The white lines in the preview are artifacts of how the preview is generated, and they are not in the result, as you will see. Okay, so we'll keep going down, because the one we want, you see different shapes appearing at the bottom of the window. So this is one based on equilateral triangles. We have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, which is not one of those. Keep going down, and the very bottom one, which is coming up here, is the one that we want for. You see, here's the pattern which looked like what we started with. Excuse me. Now the second thing that you can control is the second line here. For each one of these symmetries, there will be different centers of symmetry. For example, there's one here, which is a point symmetry. There's one here, which has got some rotational symmetries in addition. And there's one here. There's one at each corner of each vertex of the triangle, which was the pattern. every time you run one of my scripts, you will get one of the symmetry points in the center of the bounding box of the selection. You can select any selection of any shape, but the bounding box determines where the center is, and that's where the center of symmetry will be. You can control which of the centers of symmetry by changing the number in this second box. So right now it's number 1, which is going to make the symmetry that we had in our background of the title slide. If I change this number to 2, for example, when I change the number, it still thinks I'm typing, so I have to do something to let it know. If you hit enter, you're going to get a fill and you're going to be out of here, so don't do that at this point. Hit a tab or something like that, and you will then get a new preview with the version number 2 of what the symmetry point is in the center. Now the original triangle you see is over here on the left of the center, and the symmetry point here, which is the one that makes a hexagonal shape, the hexagon being out here, makes this hexagonal shape, is now in the center of the fill box. If we select number 3, then we're going to get the third vertex. So if we hit a tab on that, then we're going to get this triangular shape in the center. So here it is, the triangular shape is in the center. Here is the hexagonal shape, and here is the center which we had with number 1. Okay, so you get the idea of how this works. If the numbers can go in up to 4 in this box, if you get numbers that are higher than the number of options, it doesn't change anything. It's just the same as the highest option. Okay, so we go back to number 1 because that's going to make the fill that we want. The next box in here is useful and used only if the symmetry pattern has a row-like structure, because this number defines the offset of one row in relation to the row above it as fractions of the size of the pattern. Since we don't have rows, we have hexagons. They don't slide on each other, so this is not relevant, and this number is ignored. You can put any number in there you want, and it doesn't make any difference because nothing's going to happen. The final number that you can specify here is very interesting because it allows you a lot of control. You can specify the exact pixel width of each copy of the pattern that's put down. So this is the number which corresponds to the width of the pattern, which is the base of our triangle here. And I've put in 500 because that was just a round number. You can put in 324 or whatever, any kind of number you want. It is fun to play with overlays in which the numbers have different kinds of least common multiples or greatest common divisors to play with. Okay, so now we've got all of our numbers set up. We've got the symmetry chosen. We've got the nice preview that looks like what we want. We've got the right center of symmetry. We've got the size. So if we push OK, we'll get a fill. So it takes a short time, but not very long, for this fill to get generated. And so here it is. You see, this is the fill, which is just like the back of our title slide, which was here. Same thing. We've just made it in this very short period of time. So we have now this fill, which we just made, and it's on a separate layer, and so you can play with it. So this script, you can see, is easy to use. You can take your own pictures, you can mask them, you can play with them, and you can make interesting designs, and they can be surprises, and they can be very pleasant surprises. So it's a lot of fun. It's relatively easy. It's easy to install. If you purchase or try this out, you will get a big zipped file which will unzip into a collection of files which include things like those templates and the scripts and the pictures that show up in here. All you have to do is copy all of that stuff to one place in the Photoshop place, and the instructions on the add-ons site tell you exactly where to do that. It depends on whether you're in a Windows system or a Mac. But it's easy to copy, and then you're good to go once you restart Photoshop. If you don't restart Photoshop, Photoshop won't know you've added this in, and you won't see this as an option until you restart Photoshop. If you are interested in seeing what you can do, I've got a website at behance.net/Dick-Kane, that's me, and there I show a whole bunch of different wallpaper designs that are made with different kinds of symmetry, and in many of the cases I show you the complete whole picture from which I made a selection to create the design that you can see there. So I encourage you to go there and look and get hooked, and then you can go to this website, creative.adobe.com/add-ons products. My product number happens to be 2304, and that will give you information about purchasing this or running a trial version. The trial version that is in there is limited in that I only give you 5 of the symmetries, but it's not 5 of the bricks. It's 1 brick symmetry and 4 others using various other shapes, and it does not do the fill at the end. When you click OK, it just disappears. So you can't get any results into your screen unless you purchase the script. But here's the place to go to get it, or you can also get there by just saving a little typing, but then you have to do a search for wallpaper. So thank you very much for your interest in this. Have fun. Have lots of fun. I have been accused by some of the people who have been looking over my shoulder as I've been developing this, saying, you've been having too much fun. So I encourage you to get into this and have too much fun. Thank you for your interest.